Hello, hey, it is me, Kirsten, and this is the It's Giving Mystical podcast, and this is your card of the week for August 30th. These last couple of days of August into September, and most of you who are listening to this probably are paying attention to the planets, know that we've just come out of the retrograde season and with Mercury, know that we are going into, I think it's the Uranus retrograde, and there's just things happening in the cosmos, even more specifically in our own lives. There's just these structures breaking down, and like we know it's happening, and we know if we've talked about this 8 year, if we've thought about the 8 energy at all, like we know the things that keep us separated even from ourselves, or keep us compartmentalized, or keep us out of integrity, or getting broken down. Okay, so we talk about that. Great. And then you experience it, and there's this confusion, this internal confusion of what end is up, like what's actually happening right now, and it can feel quite overwhelming. We've talked about it being the Strength month and the Tower month in the Strength year. The universe is playing a note pretty loudly when you have the monthly energy echoing the yearly energy. There's just this double dose. The Tower energy is never comfortable. So does it mean it's bad? No, not at all. But is it comfortable? Definitely not. The Tower is going to pull away. It's like, I use the example of building versus growing. So this metaphor isn't perfect, but it is a little bit of getting uprooted. It's a little bit of getting uprooted, and a little bit, when plants have like plant shock, it's like that. Like you're shocked. You've been like placed in a new container, and you often might not have words for that, and that might feel confusing. You might not be able to explain what's happening, and that can feel disorienting. We've had these kind of 3 weeks in a row of just stay still, the 4 of Pentacles, the 4 of Cups, and then the 7 of Pentacles. So there's just this transformation in terms of what it means to sit still. And in the beginning, that probably felt really good, and then it starts to get a little achy and uncomfortable. So it's like you have 1 week of disorientation or 1 week of shocking change, and you're like, okay. And then you go into the second week of it, and it hasn't been resolved, and it can get frustrating. And then you go into the third week of it not being resolved, and you really do need to understand that you're crafting something, ripening something, evolving something, or it can feel crazy making. Long story short, if you imagine that I've never pulled a card for us, looked at it and been like, ay, and wanted to put it back and pull another, you'd be mistaken. But I don't do that. I don't do that because I don't know, right? Like I don't know where we are, why we are, what's happening. The only thing I can offer you is perspective on what is, perspective on what we might not be seeing, perspective on what the energetic weather might be and how it might be impacting us in our own hearts, our own bodies, in our communities, and in the larger world. And it's so interesting because a couple of days ago, I was thinking about something in my own practice, and I had this thought of, we're in this Tower month, and yet the Tower itself feels like it's very concentrated towards the end of this month. And I like had this thought that the Tower energy wasn't going to fully reveal itself to us until the last day of the month. And it was kind of like this passing thought, like, oh, that's a funny idea that the Tower could concentrate its energy. You know how we talked about last week that lightning seems like an instantaneous thing, but the storm has to build, like the atmospheric conditions have to gestate into just the right energies for lightning to be possible. The Tower card is associated with lightning in the tarot, and so there's something about this like atmospheric building, there's something gestating, evolving, ripening in the atmosphere to produce that lightning strike. And then my thought was, I wonder if it took the whole month to prepare for the lightning. Okay, so I tell you all of that because when I was shuffling the cards for our card this week, a bunch of cards kept falling out, and I don't usually take cards that fall out, but I do notice them, and they were all swords cards. Our struggles right now are between this idea of what should be, what we should be doing, where we should be going, who we should be with, and what conversations we should be having, and what we're actually feeling in our bodies. And then when I pulled the card for us, I pulled the Tower card for us. So I tell you all of this because there is some truth to the storm that's been building in August. There's something about the lightning, the kundalini, the clarification, the breaking down that's happening in these last few days. And I just want you to kind of layer on top of that this idea of Mercury retrograde. the retrograde season is about the reviewing, the pausing, the recalculation, let me just look back at what I've done and make sure it still feels good and clear and right. And that all has been happening. And then Mercury goes direct and the action comes. And so there's something about this month being this time where we've been gestating, evolving, ripening around something, building up the pressures in the atmosphere that are necessary for the lightning strike that's happening at the end of this month. And that feels right. Comfortable? No. Like what? Yes. Confusing? Yes. But wrong? No. Like there's something about this idea of the energy building and then the planet turning direct, and then there being this lightning strike of clarification, of removal, of recalibration, of breaking down, to allow, again, more energy into your body, into your nervous system, into your life, as a way to help you access more empowerment, more alignment, more possibility in terms of who you are and what you can create with your life. Liberation. The Tower card is associated with deep and profound liberation. The Judgment is the card that we say, once you see it, you can never unsee it. And the lightning that is associated with the Tower card is once it comes, once the storm passes, the landscape is different. And that is here with us now. So the part of me that pulled this card was like, oh, put it back. Put it back and pick something easier for the people to metabolize. And by the people, I mean me as much as I mean you. But there is something about the Tower that is asking for our attention, making us look. I want you to really, really feel into this idea of your mental framework, your narrative, in terms of it telling you what you're supposed to be doing, what you're supposed to be focused on, what conversations you're supposed to be having, clarity or around projects or relationships that you're supposed to have or that you did have, and now something just feels different. I told you guys last week I was taking my daughter to drop her off at college, and that my nervous system, my body, my mind, I was just having like a whole experience there. And I was gone for 3 days, and it felt like I lived 8 weeks in those 3 days. Like things are just different now, and there's grief there for sure, and there's excitement there for sure, but it's like you're sitting at the crossroads. Like you're sitting at the crossroads being like, okay, well, I can't go back that way, and I'm about to head off this way, and I don't really know what that's going to be like. And so there's just this moment of appreciation, kindness, and compassion for the fact that life is relentless, life is ceaseless, and we have to make our peace with that. We have to find our rhythm within that. So the Tower card, I know we've talked about it before, but we can review that, right? The Tower card is number 16 in the Major Arcana. And the Tower card comes when something is no longer working for us. Some structure that we've built, some idea that we've been given of what happiness, satisfaction, success will look like. We've kind of built this structure, and it felt right and it felt safe, probably for a long time. It may have even felt beautiful. It may have even felt invincible. It may have even felt permanent. And we built the structure. We become complacent within it, or we become trapped within it on some level, or we become stuck and still within it. And the Tower comes to break that away. The Tower is like the great leveling storm that comes in to shake that up, so that we have to be raw once again. We have to look around once again and claim our life once again. The other energy associated with the Tower, the more positive aspect of the Tower, is the energy of Kundalini rising, is the idea that we have a great wealth of power at the base of our spine, that not all of us activate it. Not all of us enjoy the full experience of being a fully empowered being in this world. And the Kundalini rising is the releasing and the channeling and the integrating of vast amounts of energy into your whole body. Many people associate it with a type of evolution, a type of evolutionary living. Many people associate it with the idea of enlightenment. Specifically for this conversation, it's an awakening, an experience that forces you to look around and say, wait, this will not last forever. Anything that I use to bind myself or to insulate myself from the world is an illusion. And what am I going to do with that realization, that awakening, that information as I decide to move forward, as I decide to take my next steps onto this new path? So I'm very curious about this August energy, how your experience of the month has been, and how you're feeling about this idea of the coat, the insulation on the wire that might have been stripped away. Like you might be feeling very raw. You might be feeling very sensitive, and you might be feeling a little bit like out of control. That's the energy the tower brings us. The tower kind of brings us this, again, bolt of energy. And we've talked about it before. It's like it overrides the system. You can think about it as a wire, insulated wire. Like so much power comes through and the wire can hold it, but it burns away the insulation. And so the wire becomes a live wire. You become raw to the experience of the world, to the experience of being alive. Why that's not a bad thing is because it's associated with awakening, and that's a beautiful thing. Why it's not a purely beautiful thing is that the lived experience of that is scary and is disorienting, requires an ability to stay with ourselves in our deepest discomfort. People like me, other teachers will say to you, like, you got to feel it to heal it. You got to feel all the feelings. Don't turn away from what's in your heart. Don't turn away from what is. Again, that's one of those things you can say it, but to really do it, to sit with your aching human heart, I don't know that there's a more courageous thing to do in this world. Like our heart is so tender and we feel life so intensely. So much of our energy is actually kind of operating around our sensitivity, operating around our hurt. And so when we have these moments where the insulation is stripped away and we're just feeling the rawness of our heart, it can be deep and it can be a shock to the system and it can be overwhelming. It's like, yes, sit with what is, and also have deep compassion for how uncomfortable that can be, how truly, truly uncomfortable that can be. It's not easy to be human. It just isn't. It's not easy to stay with yourself. It's not easy to love. It's not easy to desire. It's not easy to long. It's not easy to face your own mortality, right? To face the vulnerability of what it means to love and to be alive in the world. So I say all that to you because this tower energy is here with us this week, and I personally would love it if something else had come in. I saw it and I was like, no, thank you. These 3 weeks of gestation and sitting still and waiting, the tower is not that. The tower is clarity. The tower is illumination. The tower is awakening. The tower is liberation. Whatever has been building in the atmosphere, there's a clarity around it that is undeniable. That is its own freedom, right? Its own like, okay, well, here we are. This is what is. What I will say to you is that we also will begin September in this week ahead, and September energy is very different. The September energy is the Hermit and the Star. It's hard to find a more deeply healing combination of cards in the deck. The Hermit is the energy of stepping away to clarify where your wisdom resides, or what your work is, or what your purpose is. There's a sweetness and a quiet to Hermit energy. It's also associated with endings. It's number 9, so it has to do with the completion of a cycle. And the Star energy is, we've talked about it because we just came across it earlier this year. The Star energy is so deeply healing. The Star energy is rest here, integrate, take your time. Both of these cards pull us away from the narrative, pull us away from the play, and just give us a moment to pause, breathe, recalibrate, redirect, heal, integrate. I'm curious about how the tower will I feel it very concentrated in the early part of this week. And then whatever happens, let yourself take it in, let yourself be with it, let yourself begin to heal around it. It's like that idea of a conversation that needs to be had, and it kind of lurks in the atmosphere, it lurks around you. The idea of having the conversation is painful, not just because maybe you don't want to talk about it, but because you know that once it's said, it changes things and there will be no going back. It's like the simple idea that once you are not having the conversations in a relationship or in a dynamic that need to be had, there's already a problem. Like the problem isn't the truth. The problem is the avoidance of the truth. There's something here about that energy as well. This past week, I was feeling very clear about the idea that whatever's building, it's not necessarily an easy pill to swallow. And at the same time, it really, truly is arriving for your liberation, for your awakening. Whatever you need to do to make that okay, just give yourself so much compassion, give yourself so much grace. I would not overschedule this week. I would not ask too much of yourself. I would let yourself pad your schedule with time and space and rest and hydration and movement and nature, like the really basic self-care stuff. I would make sure that you're really covering that this week. The Tower, as much as it's instantaneous, sudden, a brilliant flash, it is also asking a lot of our little bodies, asking a lot of our containers. There might be, I don't know, kind of this mental story of how you should be handling it. And then there might be your body's real needs around what you need to handle it, and default to your body to kind of rest your mind and give your mind an outlet. So if you need to record and listen, if you need to journal, if you need to talk it out with a friend, but just to know that there doesn't need to be a solution. It's like the analogy I would use is like a tornado coming through and it changes things. So say it comes through and it takes down a house. There will be time to rebuild. There will be time to fix what needs to be fixed. But for a moment, we just have to allow ourselves to integrate the truth of what is different now, like the shock to the system. Go back to that plant analogy. Like our root system is shocked in some way. Right now, all our energy needs to be going to tending to the base, tending to the plant, tending to the shock. At some point, we will open our eyes and we'll be ready to address what needs to be addressed. But right now, we want to be just so gentle with ourselves as we go through this transformation. The last thing I'll say about the Tower, because my mom always said it to me and it's something that always echoes in my head when the Tower comes up, is that you want to move more slowly in a Tower energy. It's easy to kind of get in our own way. It's easy to get tangled in our own bodies during the Tower times. You want to make sure, again, you're in spaces that feel safe, that you're moving at an easy pace, that there is no rushing, no hurrying to get to the other side of this. We're going to take our time with whatever shows up for us this week. But I hope the Tower for you feels like liberation, empowerment, awakening. If it doesn't, or if it's a little less easy to take, I hope that you have the self-awareness, self-love to just know that it's okay not to be okay all the time. And that the sun will rise again and you will find your feet when it's time. But sometimes it's okay just to let ourselves absorb the newness, absorb the shock of what's changing around us. I send you so much love and all of the support of Pachamama and Pachapapa and the earth and the sky and the universe and all of your ancestors and guides. Like, feel them with you, let them hold you as we make this transition into the next. Take care. Bye. It's giving everything is sacred. It's giving art. It's giving light you up and turn you on and set you free. It's giving curiosity. It's giving freedom. It's giving love. It's giving you are more magical and powerful than you can comprehend. It's giving, I don't know what's happening, but I am so here for it. It's giving you are pure potential. It's giving mystical.